All right, Golf WRX. It's another lockdown Zoom chat episode here. I am here with Arccos Golf Sal Syed and Cobra Puma Golf's Michael, the Hitman Yagley. Gentlemen, how's lockdown? How's life? What's going on? Thanks for coming on.
Thank
Life's
you.
good.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. So
Lockdown.
So I'm gonna kick this off. So I've been talking. I've known Yags. I feel like we've been friends forever, but I'm a big advocate for making golfers smarter as opposed to making them longer anymore. Like, Yags works for an OEM, he works for a golf club company, but ultimately golfers can only take a 300-yard drive so far. They can only do so much with the golf clubs. They have to use their mind, and that is where your application and the partnership that you guys have, to me, was one of the smartest things that was done by any OEM. So I'm going to ask the future question right now. I know what Arccos is. Most of our community knows what Arccos is. Where could Arccos go? Let's start there. Like, where would you want it to go? What's possible for this thing?
I guess I'll field that one.
Sal, yeah, you're the Arccos guy. Fire away.
So I think we view. Let me shut this window so you don't hear these alarms. And sorry about that. So
It's going out the window.
Yeah, it's like I don't know. I guess somebody must have left the lockdown there. So I think our view is when you look at golf, it's consumed on the golf course. Like, that's where golfers are interacting with it, getting the benefit of the game and the enjoyment and creating the memories. And we've created technology that tracks and records what's happening on the golf course. And
Okay.
Where that data can take us, it starts with the golfers and making golfers more aware about their game, about their strengths and weaknesses, how far they hit each club, what club choices they need to make. But then it goes beyond that. And that's where we want to take it, which is when you're getting a lesson, what lesson should you be getting? Should it be short chips? Should it be approach games from 150 to 200 approach shots? Or if you're buying a new club, what should it be? A driver? Is that the weakest part of your game that you should be investing in? Should it be a set of irons? Should it be wedges? Should it be putter? Like, how do you define those decisions? And then when you're getting fit, introducing measurability in terms of, once you're fit, is that club actually performing? Is it fit to your specs, so that when you go out on the course, is it actually adding the 7 yards and actually helping you gain strokes, as opposed to the other way around? So it becomes, I would say, an ongoing process. And then beyond that, people like Yags, our OEM partners, how can this data help not just help them fit better clubs, but also hopefully build better clubs, where maybe the clubs will, in the future, I can see, like, I would say I can see, and maybe I'm speaking out of turn here, R&D targeted towards specific subsets of golfers. So this is for a high handicap, specifically in this age group with these weaknesses. Right now, they're just like, there's game improvement clubs and players clubs, but maybe there'll be more targeting of product down the road. So I see this data, like, maybe hopefully transforming the industry for the better through on-course accountability.
What do you think, Yags? Tony Stark?
Sal, I totally agree. Actually, I don't think you're speaking out of turn from an OEM standpoint. Being able to get people into the right clubs. I'll start with like what we've seen so far. We'll keep it simple-minded. So if you've got a driver distance and a pitching wedge distance, and you draw a straight line between those for a given player, are there gaps from a distance standpoint between those clubs anywhere in the set? And we typically see right now that there are gaps between people's longest playable iron and, say, like, their shortest playable hybrid or fairway. There's a lot of gaps in there. There are people where they hit a 7-iron exceptionally long compared to their driver. So you're like, you're unoptimized from a driver standpoint, or vice versa. You hit your driver a long way, but you don't hit your 7-iron as far as you'd expect someone who hits a driver that far. So there's the whole gapping and making sure that the set is proper. And then, Sal, you mentioned going deeper and actually designing clubs for a specific subset of players. We look at the data and understanding not just handicap, but then we can apply things about how they might be delivering the club head based on where the ball is going.
Mm-hmm.
So that can give us some implication of just what drivers should be in their hands based on the implied or AI discovered delivery. So we'll be able to go pretty deep in the data and really understand what is the best club for an individual purpose on the golf course, and then what's the best set composition through the whole bag. So we're super excited about it.
And then, like, I would say, like, I personally, like, I have to look at my data, and I can, luckily, like, should I play with a 4 hybrid or a 4 iron? That's not, like, how do you decide that unless you know what your on-course performance is? And you probably have to have both to try it, which would be good for Yags. He can sell more clubs.
Sell more golf clubs, yeah.
But the real answer really is to get to those answers, you should have more than 14 clubs, because certain days, maybe in certain weather conditions, maybe your 4 hybrid's better. In certain, like, maybe when the rough is not as thick, maybe your 4 crossover is better, or whatever it might be. So.
You nailed it for me personally, and my boss will probably fire me for saying this. This isn't about selling you more clubs just to sell you more clubs. It's to sell you clubs so that you can play better golf. Yeah, and in my particular case, when I hit my 4 and 5 iron, we'll say 4 and 5 iron, like off the turf, there's not much difference between the two. They're very similar. But if I put a peg on it, I just rip my 4 iron. And there are times where I like to use it off the tee, but there's times where I'm just probably not going to use it off the tee, and I put a 4 tee rail into the bag, and I seem to hit that better. And the data's starting to show it. I've only got a couple rounds in, but it's a better gapping club off the turf than my 4 iron is. So that it comes in and out of the bag.
Well, it's interesting. It really quickly. It's interesting because I talked to I literally had to do two podcasts with this guy from TrackMan, because TrackMan is there's obviously a lot of launch monitors out there, but TrackMan's database is like the Apple computer of the golf industry. It's like it's involved in everything that we in the club business talk about. It's TrackMan. Their library to me is half of what I would call probably the holy grail of identifying exactly how golfers learn, how golfers interact with the golf course, how they hit the ball, how they perform. Your information would be the second component of that. So I've always thought about like a world, and I remember Yags, I called you, I was walking downtown Toronto, this is like 9 months ago, and I went like a 20-minute rant, like, you guys should be doing this, and this is what it needs to look like, and blah, blah, blah. And I remember exactly where I was, because it just hit me like a bolt of lightning. But right now, everything, when you buy a golf club, it's all put in a category. It's like, it goes far, it gets good spin numbers, it gets good, it gets that. It's great if you want to sell golf clubs, but the problem is to make people better, those numbers don't make people better. If you could correlate Arccos data to whether or not a golf club works, like say, for example, this took Bob Smith from, Topeka, Kansas, and he was a red Arccos player with his old driver. Now he's a green Arccos driver because he's hitting the right sides of the fairway more often. He's hitting this more often. He's doing this more often.
Getting more strokes off the tee. Basically.
Right. And all of a sudden you're identifying a player, not by distance, but by overall performance. Right. And it goes into my bigger question, which is something you guys might be working on now, is hot spotting Arccos. And what I mean by that is, like, say you take a 400-yard hole. And, it's a dog leg to the left, right? 400-yard dog leg to the left. Arccos will decide, depending on your handicap and the type of player is, what your green light situations are. So it's dog leg right, hit the right side of the fairway, that's a green light situation. Yes, you should actually try to hit the middle of the green, or you should try to do this. And all of a sudden you start identifying, yellow, red, green. So then players understand right away, I hit a good drive, it's in the fairway, but I'm on the wrong side of the fairway. So this is in the fairway, but this is a yellow, maybe red pin. Shouldn't go for it. But that tour players think like that, but Bob Jones from Topeka doesn't. So is there ever a plan to even add more options and even more data to where it becomes like it becomes literally a caddy?
Yeah, I think it's a great point. And I think the way we view it is we call it Arccos caddy, because the idea is, when you look at the history of the game, like some of the oldest paintings, Mary Queen of Scots is with a caddy.
Mm-hmm.
And C.V. McDonald, who wrote Scotland's Gift, one of the founders of the USGA, wrote about the caddy, saying the caddy is an excellent mentor, so well versed as a caddy in your game that he suggests the club you ought to play with. And should you take one of your own choice, you'll usually make a bad shot. And so, and he's talking about caddy in a really reverential um, way. But now, like, caddies have kind of gone missing for all of us, almost all of us. We kind of play golf by ourselves, but obviously on the PGA Tour they don't. Where rounds matter the most, they don't. So we view us as bringing maybe that caddy back, but in the way that you're describing it. And I think we have maybe a broader view of the caddy, which is there's an in-play part of the caddy, but there's a post-play. We just call it caddy as well.
Mm-hmm.
So this caddy knows your tendencies while you're playing. It can help you with smarter decisions. So for that, I would say we're going down the path of providing more and more information in play, but doing it in a way where it doesn't get in your way, but it's there when you need it.
Right.
Just like you would talk to a human caddy when you want. When you don't want to talk to him, you don't. And so I think as we view our feature development, I think historically what we've done, we put one major feature in play out, then we do one post-play analytics out. So we actually pushed out AI rangefinder, which is going to go in the direction that you're saying. Right now, it takes all the numbers, elevation, humidity, slope, temperature, all that stuff into account, calculates the impact of it, lays out like what your 5 most closest clubs to that are based on the distances you actually hit, not what you think you hit, which
Right.
There's a big difference. And maybe we'll talk about it a little bit later. We're looking at like what people think they do and what they actually do. The gap widens the worse, the higher your handicap, which is fascinating. But we're definitely going to go down that path. But there's also this path of like, once you're done playing, how do you improve? Whether you're what should you be practicing on the range? What lessons should you be taking? What content should you be searching? What clubs should you be buying? What should you be getting fit for? So
Right.
we view caddy in an all-encompassing way, anything to do with your game and getting better and making smarter decisions.
Yagley, I got a question for you. So, like, I see the information that Arccos gives as a necessity, meaning every golfer should have Arccos. Like, now, truth be told, I have a set of clubs with Arccos on it. The set that I'm playing right now, I don't have Arccos on it because I changed my grips. Okay. But which is easy, like, it's an easy thing to happen, and it's easy to just be like, well, I don't want to put new grips on. How do you make this essential? Because I think that this information, the Arccos thing, is more essential than most of the stuff that golfers feel like they need to get. Like, the Arccos information is actually going to make them better players. So, like, what do you guys do to make this system? If you don't have it, you're 5 strokes behind. Like, how do you make it essential? It's like getting kids to eat their vegetables, because it's not as sexy as hitting a 320. It's, it's a little different. It's going to tell you to lay up sometimes. So, Yagley, this is for you. How do you think you make Arccos essential?
Well, I'm going to say the first thing is time. I'll throw an analogy out there. Launch monitors, let's say they showed up 20 years ago, 15, 20 years ago, and they weren't everywhere.
Right.
But they are pretty much everywhere now. If you're going to get fit, you're probably going to get on a launch monitor. If you're going to get a lesson, you're probably going to get on a launch monitor. But even like 10 years ago, that wasn't the case. The value of the data to the player, to the fitter, to the instructor is going to become more and more apparent. So our job is awareness. I'm going to sound like a marketing guy for just a second, but between us and Arccos and anybody else who's using the system, other OEMs, it's about awareness and getting people to understand what it is, what it does, and what the benefit is. And then, honestly, time. I've told so many golf instructors and retailers and fitters, I put up a picture of a launch monitor, like, interesting, this is a Arccos/Cobra Connect conversation. Why is there a launch monitor up there? Right. And I asked them this question: can you imagine doing a fitting without this? And they'll go, no, I couldn't imagine it. I said, I'm telling you right now, 3, 4, could be 5, could be 2. I don't know. We're going to see how fast this takes off. There's going to be a moment where you can't imagine not having the data, because a player comes in to get fit and they say, I want a new driver. Well, let me see how you're playing a driver on the golf course. I mean, just hitting balls into a net or even on the range, that's great. right? You can optimize launch conditions, but you don't see how people are really playing the club. So my belief is time is going to be the biggest factor. And I tell you right now, we've got, Chad DeHart. He's been out basically instructing, sharing, teaching about Cobra Connect / Arccos now for 3 years. And let's say in year one, he had 100 guys say, send me grips and sensors, I'll put them on my clubs. And he's giving this offer to all fitters and retailers. Year two, it might have been 200. Year three, it was 450. It has gone up exponentially because it just took a while. Sometimes you have to say the same thing to somebody 3 times, to be really honest, before they go, oh, I get it.
Right.
So it's simple, it's easy, it's unobtrusive, and I'm going to get really good data. Yeah, that's what you're going to get. So time and awareness. Yeah.
So like if I am Mr. Marketer at Cobra or Arccos, for example, if you said, okay, look, I need to crank this up. Like I need to make this essential. That was my task. I'm sort of telling you how to do your job, which is kind of obnoxious, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'm losing my mind.
No, I love it. Do it.
For me, I would go. I'd go to. Go ahead. I'd go to. You go. You say what you're going to say.
I was going to say it's Jose and Luke's job. So you lecture them right now.
Okay. So if I'm going to do this, I am going to True Spec or I'm going to Club Champion. I'm going, look. You want the one hole in fitting is the ability to follow up. Truly follow up with your clients. And most good fitters will say, check in 6 weeks later, check in yada yada, check in yada yada yada. And what's going to happen is the student's going to go, I'm hitting it pretty good. I'm not playing very well, but I'm hitting the driver well, right? Because there's that weird social, like you fit me for this driver. I spent $1,000, but I don't want to put try to put the toothpaste back in the tube. Yep. And the fitter's not going to press for it because the client that he sold a $1,000 driver to seems to be happy, so he's on his way. Okay, great. I don't need to do anything there. If you had Arccos now and a really capable fitter, the Arccos system will alert that fitter 2 weeks later after 5 or 6 rounds have been played, because literally in every fitting, first round out with a new set of clubs, whether you played like dog shit or not, it doesn't matter. The shine is there. It's like you got your best clothes, your new clubs, your brand new bag. Everything's awesome. You don't care how bad you played. It's going to be a good experience. It's 5, 6, 7 rounds after that you really know if those golf clubs work. So if you have a fitter that it's been using the Arccos and watching this client, like, hey, dude, we made that driver for you. You're playing okay, but like you're losing your driver to the right and you're hitting your 3-wood all over the place. Bring them back in. There's something going on there, because he can specifically see drivers going right, 3-wood's going left, irons are going short. Maybe we need to crank the lofts up. There's a ton of things that the fitter can do. And now that client becomes a student of the fitter, and the fitter has
to be an ongoing relationship. And the fitting,
I'd be pounding Club Champion right now. I'd be shoving it down their throat.
Actually, we announced a partnership with Club Champion already. So thanks for maybe you did the pounding beforehand for us.
I did not.
But
we
did launch a partnership with Club Champion where for that same reason. I mean, their view is the fitting is an ongoing experience,
right?
And they want to make sure when they fit you, they're fitting you correctly, and they don't have complete information on your game, because if you come in for 3-4 hours, these are my words, not their words, but to me, when you look at somebody's swing for an hour, if you take 20 driver swings. You don't take 20 driver swings while you're playing around. You in
5
like
or
10
6
minutes or 20 minutes.
Right.
You take the 5 or 6 you take over like an hour and a half, 2 hours, 4 hours. Maybe you take 10 to 12 driver swings over the 4-hour round, and they're broken up by 10, 15 minutes with putting and chipping and all that. So first off, the fitting environment, hitting in a fitting bay doesn't truly replicate what you're doing on a golf course. It's the best we can do right now.
Right.
But like if the fitters have more information on when they're coming in, a picture of what you're already doing, that's going to inform and give you a better view. And then when they go back out, they can see like, okay, is this actually how I got fit? Is it actually resulting how I fit this user? Is it actually how I thought? Are they performing how I thought they would?
Right.
And there's a good chance they're not. In fact, one of the other OEMs, I heard this story, which was, Ping's John K. Soham, who Yags knows. We were on the stage together. they at the PGA show they talked about like John K found himself like his fitting like on like the off course simulator data showed it should be a certain lie angle, but he was missing more to the left on the course than the fitting would have showed. So he actually got his lie angle changed based on course data, based on Arccos data on missed tendencies, and improved his game as a result. So
which is the only data that matters, because the thing that you guys, every fitter is up against is the assumption that a fitting needs to be in an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, right? It's always, we need to cram everything into this bucket. We have 3 hours, they're paying for our time, and that's it. The thing that everybody needs to let go of is fitting is a long process, right? It should be a long process. So you let go of the time, especially because that's how people are trying to fix it. Like you said, we don't have the ability to, or we're not set up yet to be able to really do a true testing where people are hitting off of grass. They only have a certain amount of time. Like, they're trying to get all 14 clubs dialed in, blah, blah, blah. But if the fittings were treated as almost like a relationship as opposed to an appointment, then it changes. And that's where your time thing comes in, Yags, is changing people's perspective. Like, yeah, you went into TXG for 2 hours. Ian got you teed up. We know what direction we're going in now. Now you have some clubs to try. But over the course of 6-9 months, we're going to find out exactly what works for you and exactly what doesn't. And don't worry if it doesn't work right now. We're going to get there. If we have a snowflake and it works right out of the gate and it works all summer, then we got lucky, because it is sort of luck to get it right the first time, in my opinion.
And then I would say on top of that, it also should be, I mean, maybe Yags would love to hear your insights on this. Like, should I have a different driver for winter versus summer?
Tony?
Potentially. Yeah, it depends upon, are your winters and summers in California or in Connecticut?
they're in Connecticut, yeah. So it's pretty different.
We're going to sell you a driver with some snowshoes for your work in the winter there, pal. Yeah, depending upon the conditions and what you're trying to do, like if they're extreme enough, then I would say yes, especially if it's a big difference between wind and no wind. I'd get the ball down.
So on windy days, I should play with a different driver versus not windy days.
I would play it lower. I really would.
I think what would be interesting is like if I have that data, like that gives me an idea. I should probably try this. So maybe I'll talk with you offline of a non-windy and a windy driver, and then we'll test them out on my data, and we'll compare like strokes gained on it.
So I got to backtrack just a little bit, because Johnny, you were spot on when you said we should get in the grills of all these fitters out there. Mm-hmm. Well, I have been for 3 years now. This is third season. So in 2018, when we launched, to all respect to those fitters, we had one grip, right? By mid-year, we had 3 or 4 more, right? So you got these fitters are saying, well, I'd rather put it in the grip because the screw-on is good, but it's not great. The grip's better, but you don't have enough grips. Well, year 2, we had like 15 grips.
Right.
And 3 manufacturers. By year 3, this is third season, we probably have 20 grips and 3 manufacturers. So we now have enough grips that if somebody wants to get fit and they want to put the system on their clubs, we could probably satisfy 95% of the people's needs. And I would say even the 5% would be people who are like.
Just to that point, like Yags has been on my case saying that you need to get in with fitters since day one when we formed the partnership. And so what we've done in parallel based on feedback from Cobra and Yags is we built this fitters and pros dashboard. So fitters can go in anytime they fit somebody and follow their students, see how they're doing, deep dive into their stats. So we've built all the tools that the fitters need, and we're going to keep enhancing them as we get more feedback to make them smarter for the fitters. But there's no doubt that Yags has been ahead of the curve on this one.
Well, yeah, and it's just because I see the opportunity for Arccos to be what, if I was going to compare it to another type of service, would be TrackMan, right? Because, there's a ton of good services in the, flight scope or whatever the hell you want to call it, like in the, launch monitor industry, but TrackMan is sort of like the gold standard right now. Arccos, in my opinion, is the only show in town for Golf IQ on a mass scale. So you guys are compiling data over a long period of time, because to me that's the secret sauce that you guys have is the user interface is cool, but the data you're collecting is is the game changer. It's literally having that and looking at it 10 years later and going, aha, 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 aha. Now I can actually make a bunch of golfers better. And, you know, the thing that I find, you know, really, really interesting on top of all this is, you know, when you take a club company like Cobra, and, you know, they're putting it on all their golf clubs and sort of signaling to the market, like, this is the direction that we're going. Yes, we want a driver that flies really far and beats out TaylorMade and everybody else, but ultimately we want you guys to shoot lower scores. It's an interesting thing that you guys did. And the funny thing that I found is that not every OEM jumped on it, like, immediately. It's like, if you really, really want to make players better, maybe if it's not Arccos, it's got to be something, because, you know, if Johnny Wonder flings it out there 330 on a par 5 and I have 200 yards in, now what do I do? Like, what if I dump it in the water? What if, you know, what if my game just falls apart? How often does that happen? And, you know, you guys have an interesting opportunity to literally make golf overall more enjoyable. And I guess I get worked up. It's just because people don't get as jacked up on it as I do. Just because I can just look at my own game. Like, I can hit it. I'm a good player, but when I'm playing well, I'm always 4, 5, 6 shots worse than I should be, because my brain doesn't work. Because I just don't. I play checkers, not chess, on the golf course. You know, it's a whole nother.
Yeah, I think
other
like golf
thing.
has that variability in general built in terms of having good and bad days, and just having the awareness also helps. Like, you know, like when I'm having a bad day, what actually goes south in my game.
Right.
That's also, like, knowing that is very insightful. And without a data tracking system, it's actually very hard to figure out where are you losing strokes, because you're taking 80 to 120 shots around, or maybe 65 as if you're as good as Yags is. But
front nine. That's the front nine. Yeah.
But to, like, truly assess, like, okay, where are you actually bad? Like, what ends up happening is people will think they're bad at putting. In fact, this is my story. I thought I really suck at putting. I was going to business school, playing a bunch of golf, probably spending more time on the golf course than in the classroom, but who's counting? And I was, you know, I was tracking my stats manually, how many putts I'm hitting, how many fairways, how many greens. I was hitting a lot of greens. I was taking a lot of putts. So I was like, oh my God, my putting sucks. And I kept practicing. I was like about I think like a 6 or a 7 at that point. And this was like 6 years ago. And then when we launched our strokes gain stuff, it showed me, you know, my approach game was the problem. I was leaving myself 40, 50 foot putts because Gale golf course is large greens.
Right.
And so I practiced all this time putting, and my putting was, I was putting better than a scratch golfer. And I'm like practicing that. So I was wasting my time, literally wasting my time. So as soon as I started like taking that, my practice for approach game was really like hitting 20 or 30 approach shots before a round, as opposed to taking 20 or 30 putts. And that changed my game, just that little change, because it was like eye-opening. But without data and system tracking and benchmarking, you can't figure that out. You just can't. And then you're wasting your time. You feel stuck. And that we're trying to get you unstuck.
Is there a version of Arccos that starts to teach people actually how to practice? Because you can take the data and go, okay, I'm not hitting my mid irons that well, so I better get to the range and hit the mid irons. But I feel like, once again, you know, living 10 years from now, Arccos has a high impact interval training for golf. Like right now, you know, like you went from like Muscle Magazine 5 years ago, it's like 6 meals a day in the gym for 4 hours, blah, 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 blah. Then all of a sudden you have this yeoman from somewhere that does 50 push-ups, 50 pull-ups, and eats apples and drinks a thing of water in the morning, and he's jacked out of his mind.
Yeah, I think that's the direction we're going in. Like, if our framework is like, we gotta go from description to prescription. So right now we're describing what your issues are.
Right.
We gotta start prescribing, and for that, like, there's a bunch of great content out there, or content creators. So I think from a platform standpoint, we are going to add content that ties into exactly your weaknesses and what you should work on based on your skill level, age, the time. Maybe you play in the morning, and maybe when the ground's wet and dewy, there are different techniques or different clubs versus when it's dry. All that stuff, I think it's gonna, like, that's the direction absolutely we're going, and that the world's gonna look like that. That's what people are gonna expect. And I think that's the power and promise of data done correctly.
Yagley, I got a question for you. So all your Cobra athletes, do you guys have any kind of video content or studies where you take, you know, some of your staff players, whether it be Ricky or Bryson, and take Arccos over 6 or 7 tournaments? Because they have strokes gained, they have all the PGA Tour stats, but those aren't necessarily for, like, once again, Bob from Topeka. Like, you know, it's like it's too much information. But have you ever plugged and played Ricky course to course, round for round on the PGA Tour? Go, okay, this is what Ricky Fowler looks like on Arccos. So you can see through Arccos what Ricky Fowler looks like, right? Like, he hits it over here, he does this. Do you guys have? Because that, to me, maybe I missed it and I just didn't see it, but that to me is like, that's a rabbit hole. I'd love to see that.
We
Guys,
did.
why don't, like, that sounds like a cool idea.
We did it for probably half a dozen rounds last year.
Okay.
It's a little difficult because when they're playing, as one of the biggest shortfalls of shot length, which is a great system, is you don't know what club they're hitting.
Right.
So we would make estimates of the club that they would hit. We talked to Tim or Joe, their caddies, and say, hey, could you tell us what clubs you actually did hit? A little bit cumbersome, but it was worth it. So we did for, like I said, I'd say not 5 or 6 rounds, 5 or 6 tournaments, which was enough to build up a database for how they hit their shots. And then we compared it to what they believed they hit their club distances and their tour players. So their on-course distances were very close to what they believe they hit their shots.
Right.
Because that's what they do for
Tour
a living.
players.
So yes.
I mean,
They're pretty dialed
But,
in.
you know, like, just talking about that, like, I was just looking at our data, and we drew a chart of, like, what your distance to the pin is and how far did you actually end up hitting it. And a scratch golfer on their wedge shots was on average 10 yards short. But as you increase, so, like, basically what ends up happening is when you're using a pitching wedge, actually we did it by club. So if you picked a pitching wedge, what distance was your distance to go to the green that you picked it as a scratch golfer, and how far did you actually end up hitting it? So that tells us how far they think they were going to hit and how far they ended up hitting it. I wanted to see perception versus results or reality.
Mm-hmm.
And we thought one way we can measure how far people think they hit their clubs. And we looked at this early on in their experience with Arccos, because we know, like, after five rounds, they become really much more aware about their distances. But so when you look at early rounds, the difference between perception and reality. So performance decreases, say, by 20 yards. So pitching wedge, how far it goes for a scratch golfer versus a 20 handicap golfer on, like, ballpark numbers, 20 yards shorter.
Okay.
But perception of how far it goes, it's, they think they hit a 10 yards difference as opposed to 20 yards. So
Right.
the gap between perception is increasing slowly, whereas the actual performance is growing faster. And on average, scratch golfers, I think they're about, early on, they're about 10 yards short on average with their pitching wedge, or 9 yards or something like that. But 20 handicapper is like 22 yards shorter. So actually maybe 30 yards short.
Right.
20 yards more. So it's kind of fascinating how the performance is decreasing and how their performance decreases a lot faster than they think it does.
Well, it's also getting people away from the fact that they're hitting certain clubs into certain greens. Like, if they hit a shot into a green, so they had a 145-yard shot, whether they had driver or lob wedge, it doesn't matter. And
Totally.
what I would like to see, if I was going to make a request, is one, figure, and I would love to be involved in this, figure out who the smartest golfer on tour is. Maybe you start with a Champions Tour, right? You find a way, you find a tour player like Bernhard Langer, for example, and you find out what player on the Champions Tour, deal with some old school guys that don't hit 300. Find out who actually is the smartest golfer out there, who hits it in the right places the most often. Because what you're going to start doing is separating physical dominance versus playing the game. So you have a chess, right? Okay, so then you take those two buckets, right? And then you're able to show people power gets you this, but there's diminishing returns. Golf IQ gives you this, and these are the diminishing returns. Guy in the middle obviously is doing pretty well. Mm-hmm. But it changes the conversation, because if you take a player like Bernhard Langer, and I know the makeup of his bag like the back of my hand, literally the guy doesn't care what number is on the club. He does not care. He's got a 126 club and a 179 club, and the 179 club could say pitching wedge, and the 126 club could say pitching wedge. He doesn't care. He just,
Yeah.
he has those clubs.
Ideally, we'll have digital clubs in the future where instead of 9-iron, it'll have the yardage on it, like fed in from Arccos.
But do you know how?
Yags.
Oh yeah.
But everything that you guys are doing.
We totally agree with what you're saying, and in fact, I think one of the things we've actually we do like a company Shark Tank every once in a while, and one of the ideas that people were really interested in was like strokes gained ability and strokes gained decision making. So how many strokes did you lose because of your ability, and how many did you lose because of decision making? Because we know what your ability is based on how far you hit each club and things like that, and when you make a wrong decision, we can see it. That club was never going to get there. Like, no chance. Why did you pick it?
Right.
So you just lost the swing stroke. So it'll be, I think there's like some really fascinating studies that can be done on this data. But certainly, I mean, I think like the idea of making golfers aware, how smart are they? What is their golf IQ? Would be really, really interesting.
I would love golf IQ, the actual number, to be a thing. Because Yagley, I got a question for you. But everything that you're doing, Yagley, at Cobra, literally bucks up against traditional golf marketing. So everybody's going, hit it far, hit it far, hit it far, hit it far. But you're literally, your department's going, yeah, but, hit it far, great, but you still got to think about all this stuff, right? It's kind of it's literally, as far as golf marketing is concerned, it's counterintuitive, because nobody talks about getting smarter ever, except for you guys. Nobody does. Even like, I can't think of one company that's going out there and saying, we actually want you to start thinking about where you're going to hit it. Hit it 300, but hit it over there. That's interesting. So, like, what's it like for you being like the, Tony Stark, stepchild to the, OEM business? Because it is counterintuitive. What you're doing is completely bucking the system in a weird way.
Yeah. Well, so let's start with how we got in. And I'm going to sound like a brand guy just for a second, but game enjoyment. I mean,
okay.
Just for a second, because you've said it several times, and I just let you go with it. Okay. We are all about people having fun playing golf. Mm-hmm. Now, we also believe that people have more fun when they score better. Sure, correct. Is it fun to rip a drive 300 yards? Yeah, but it's probably just as much fun, or even more fun, to say, let's see, I beat you 3 ways today, didn't I? Mm-hmm. Because you were playing smarter golf. Now, all the things you guys were just talking about, it in the right places, making good decisions on the golf course. We believe that, hitting it the long way, but hitting it in the right place are the two things that make people play better golf, make them play, well, they can play smarter golf, make them enjoy the game more, because we really do want people to enjoy the game. Now, here's the funny thing. Olszewski, also known as T.O., right?
Yeah.
T.O. And he has said it publicly. I'm going to quote him. He's like, well, the one thing we know that Cobra does that can actually help you play better golf is Arccos. That's the one thing, right? If we put a driver in your hand that we believe you're going to hit 3 yards longer, can't guarantee you're going to play better because of it. Mm-hmm. We put a Forge Tech in your hand and we know that damn thing's going to be longer than almost anything you've ever played if you've been playing a player's type iron, because it's that good.
Right.
Can't guarantee you're going to score any lower, right? Mm-hmm. But if you put this system on your clubs and go play a couple of rounds and then look at the data and think to yourself, damn, should I be hitting driver on number 3 or should I hit 3-wood?
Right.
Or, man, I really do hit my 7-iron 160 yards, not 165 yards.
Right.
And you act accordingly and you play smarter golf. I guarantee you, I guarantee you will shoot lower scores.
Right.
And it's the one thing that we do that I can actually guarantee. You play smarter, you're probably going to enjoy it more, and you're going to shoot lower scores. So it does. It flies right in the face of hit it farther, farther, farther. But I'm okay with that.
Well, yeah, I mean, because you have thank God you have a company that wants to dump some money into that program. Because to be honest, the distance chase, and from where I sit, you know my job, like I'm in the middle of it all the time. What clubs and how far is it going and this and that, and I love it. It's great. It keeps me employed.
Yeah, sure. It's fun. It's interesting.
It is for a second, because the one thing that I do know, and I know this for a fact, is I've played enough golf with people that have made that are new, the reaction that they get from making a par versus the reaction that you get from somebody hitting it 300 is not even in the same planet. Hitting it 300 is like, wow, I hit it pretty good. Their ego kind of pops up like, okay, wow, I'm pretty strong. When they make par for a new golfer represents so much more than a 300-yard drive.
Oh,
So
yeah.
much more. It's not even in the birdie, forget about it. Birdie, they're going to die.
Yeah, you're right. It's exponential. Think about that.
It's not even
you're
close.
Right. I watch people making a par. They get pretty thrilled. I mean, really thrilled. A birdie, they about faint. They just faint dead away.
Because it represents.
They'll remember those. I remember. I have a bunch of friends who have brought into the game, and they'll take photos. Like my first par. Like I have photos with a few of my friends. Like this was the first par. I want to take a photo. First birdie. I want to take a picture and like that. But like when they bomb it, that's not like there's a momentary elation. But I would say like actually scoring well on a hole or birdie that lasts a lot longer.
It's the same thing as when a tour player can put 72 holes together and win a tournament. Same type of emotional reaction where it's like, oh my God, for this one hole, I thought well. I hit at least 2 good shots in there. I got lucky. I did this. I did that. It's so much more, but people don't. Nobody's selling that experience. Literally, nobody's selling that experience. That's the experience that I want to see sold. Is like sell making. Well, Yags is. Yags is selling cocaine and a bunch of other stuff too. But,
I got whatever you need. Whatever you need.
I mean, like I said, I've blown up Yags' cell phone multiple times in this topic. I think you guys are doing plenty, but the golf industry isn't doing enough. And I look forward to companies like TrackMan and Arccos and everybody sort of figuring out a way to make all that information actually live where it's something my kids, my 2 boys, when they come up, they can look at it and go, wow, you guys used to do this to get better and all I have to do is that. Like, that's true. I want it to be before the cell phone and the life before cell phones and life after cell phones. It's like life before golf IQ is important and life after. And I think there's so much there. Anyway, I'll get off my soapbox.
No, sorry. I'm going to jump on the soapbox with you because you mentioned burnout longer a little while ago. And I would say the same is true with every tour player. It's like they're really smart. They know that they want a club that hits at 187 yards real consistently, or whatever their number is that they're searching for at that point, right? I don't need a club that when I'm standing over 187-yard shot hits it a lot farther. No, I need one that hits at 187, right? Yeah, and I would say that, on top of it, as a manufacturer, we need a club that's going to help you hit it 187, that's going to be the most forgiving for whatever playing level you're at, that also has the best terminal characteristics to do what you need it to do on that 187-yard shot. If you want it to roll out a little bit, then it's our job to give you a club that's going to let it roll out. If it is, no, I want it to come in steep and stop, right? But whatever it is, it's 187 yards.
I'm curious, how does Bryson think about club gapping and data? How does he work with you guys as engineers on stuff using data?
So he's got these really cool charts for each club where it shows his launch conditions and his distance, and then I think he throws in distances at 2 different conditions, and he uses that kind of as his Bible, and it has changed ever so slightly over the past year or 2, especially with the last 6 months where he's bulked up. But he's trying to keep he's trying to keep his gapping really consistent, and so
how much gap does he look for?
You know what? I'd have to look at the data. I want to say it's between 10 to 13 yards between each club. Yeah. But
so I guess
over the past year, No, but over the past year, we've worked with him on varying groove geometries, varying CG location. He's had to adjust his lie angle because he has modified his swing tremendously. So we're trying to keep up with him as he's changing his game. You're gonna ask something else, Sal. Sorry.
Yeah, but so my question really is: so as we're building the strokes gained feature, breaking stuff down by distances and where your problem areas lie and things like that. One of the things that stood out to me was, which I didn't realize, I hit as many approach shots, and so we started looking at a lot more users. I would say maybe 25% of approach shots on average are between 50 to 100 yards. And maybe for higher handicappers, it might be even more because they're first getting, like, maybe their third shot's getting there. You know, they're hitting the third shot out of there. So why, and so from that distance, all like about feel, right? Like you have a 60 degree that you're either going to hit full or not, or 54, you're going to choke down on it or take a quarter or like 3/4 swing or something like that. Why aren't there clubs? So my club gapping goes to, say, like I have like a 54 degree that goes 89 yards. But from 89, then there's 75 or 80 yards by 60 goes 80, 79 yards. But from 79 all the way to 50 or even shorter, I have to then feel stuff, which is much harder for me as an amateur golfer who doesn't practice a lot. Isn't there a technology where, like, and 60 degrees honestly are very hard for me to hit generally, so I don't hit it because I feel like I'll blade it more often than I won't on a full shot, and then the punishment's terrible. 54 is easier to hit, so I end up like choking down on my 54. Isn't there like maybe not a higher lofted club, but a shorter length club or something like that can provide more club gapping? Because I hit my 3-iron or 3 hybrid or whatever 4-iron like once every 3 rounds maybe. But from this gapping distance, I'm hitting a lot of shots, but I'm relying on feel where I don't really get to practice it that much. And so you can see proximity to the hole doesn't drop like it should, where the way it drops, where you can actually just take a full swing and pick a smarter club.
Really quickly, what wedges do you have? Do you go pitching wedge like 52, 58, or what do you, or 50?
I have a pitching 50, 54, and 60.
Oh, there are plenty of wedges in there.
I know, okay. but they go to like, so my 54 is the one I feel most comfortable with in terms of like, but 60, I don't feel comfortable hitting a full 60 degree every time because it does bring more of a blading risk. Like I would say when I have to hit a flop shot or something like that,
right.
I'll hit a 60. But hitting a 60 degree from fairway is for a player of my skill level kind of dicey proposition. Generally, I don't want to do it. But so after 90 yards, there is literally from 90 to 50 where I'm hitting a whole bunch of shots. I'm relying on feel. Why haven't OEMs or club manufacturers built clubs for that distance where you don't have to rely on feel? Is there a reason?
So now we're getting into the highly classified top secret portion of the conversation. I would ask you some more questions. One, do you want that club to be conforming to the rules of golf?
Yes.
That limits it. Are you willing to play clubs that have substantially different lengths?
I like my clubs have different lengths already. My driver's like so much longer than my 54.
Substantially different from your wedges.
We're talking about going like from this to like
because it's physics. And by the way, Sal, you've asked a great question, and that is actually a research topic that has been going on for years. Because that was one of the hypotheses is, well, what if I could take a full swing at a club and I normally hit a 50 degree lofted club 100 yards.
Mm-hmm.
Can you make a club of the same length, where I take the same swing, but only goes 50 yards? And it has a nice trajectory and it lands soft.
And easy to hit.
That is not, as I like to say to our bosses, not a trivial thing to do. That's why I asked the thing about conformance.
So if it's non-conforming, what would you do? How would you make it if it's non-conforming?
You can mess with the grooves. You can do a bunch of stuff.
I'd mess with the face material. I'd make the face material really dead so that you're swinging that same 50 degree wedge.
So
it comes off as substantially. Oh yeah, well, yeah.
Oh, so there's a range on both ends.
Yeah.
Yes.
Really. Because you gotta make it pretty much out of a rigid material. It can only be so soft. It can't have any advanced spring-like characteristics. So you're looking at hard polymers and metals, basically. So now you're limited to just how slow you can make that thing.
And
So yeah, that's
and
it. Yeah.
he's talking
That's the
about
problem.
speed, and like I'll use the example like a 64-degree wedge, right? People think that a 64-degree wedge is going to spin like crazy. It actually doesn't spin like crazy. The ball comes out like a pillow. So like if you throw a pillow and it hits the ground, that's what a 64-degree wedge does to a golf ball. You know, the RPMs go up, but ultimately it's not like it doesn't hit the green and spin back at you. That's not
Yeah.
what it does. It comes out dead.
Yeah.
So what he's saying is that there are metals, because I've heard this urban legend before. There are ways to make a golf club where just by the essence of the golf club, you can make the same swing. One club goes 120, the other one goes 95 because the face is different. There's ways to do it with the groove patterns. There's ways to do it with the metals. There's ways because the face can't have any spring to it. So it's like the difference between, you know, kicking a, I don't know. I have some stupid analogy, but it's possible. It's very possible. I've heard of it. I'd love to try it sometime, but you know.
So how much room do you have on the so this is COR stuff that you're talking about, right? Yags.
Yeah, but with wedges, it's not so much COR. It
So
is.
how is it measured?
If you wanted to make a full swing 50-degree shot go half the distance, you'd probably put a really soft polymer on the face, which would dramatically decrease ball speed. Probably increase spin. Might do both.
But it won't be
both be a good
conforming.
thing. Wouldn't be conforming.
But
Yeah.
how does USG determine like how dead can you make it now? This is too dead, so it's not conforming.
It's not about deadness. It's about the material hardness. So it can only be so soft. If you're at home, you take your fingernail and literally indent it into different types of plastic. Say the plastic on your mouse is pretty hard. You're not going to dent it. The plastic on a watch band, you're going to dent that, and you can see it, and that's too soft.
I see.
There's a Shore A level and a Shore D level that you have to conform to, but that's the simplest way to look at it.
Well, go ahead, Yags.
No, it's good. No, I'm sorry. Same topic, but this came out of the data. I remember looking at it and I was like, "Are you kidding me?" So we looked at thousands of players, and as you would expect, as loft goes up, distance goes down, and it went all the way across the board. Makes sense. You're going to hit a 50-degree shorter than you're going to hit a pitching wedge, or 54 is going to go shorter than a 50. Except for when you got to the 64. When you got to the 64, it was longer. It was longer than a 60. They were blading it. They were blading them. They had to be. You look right at the data.
I was surprised 60 wasn't longer than a 54.
Yeah.
I guess people.
So was I. Yeah. People can hit 60s, but 64s get really crazy.
I don't think we separated out whether it was from the rough or the fairway. We should look at it 60 just from the fairway. Because I feel like and then we take maybe not the softest conditions because we can overlay weather.
Yep.
So maybe we take it like where it's harder terrain. I feel like 60 we might see some interesting outcomes there. How often are you?
Sorry, John, you were going to ask something else too.
Well, no, I mean, I guess I have actually one last question, and we'll wrap this up. But as far as the actual user interface of the equipment that you need for Arccos has obviously gotten smaller and more sleek and this and that. Right now they're putting in the butt into the grip and it adds a little length to the grip. Like what does the future hold for that? Like, is there a world where you have the Arccos device planted in the butt end of the shaft where it's not even on the grip and the grip goes over that? Or is there like a little sticker that goes onto the club and so you don't even notice it's there? Like what is the, like, what's the unicorn scenario for Arccos where these things are so easy to put on a golf club that?
So right now when you get like the Cobra clubs, I would say maybe Yags, you can talk about it, like the embedded sensors. They're like super small, swing weight neutral. I mean,
well, technically, we designed the club to be swing weight neutral when you take the sensor off, because it's 4.3 grams, and I can tell you from our standpoint, you've heard us say this, Sal, that's a huge deal. So to make it swing weight neutral, we're adding a little weight in the head, we're adding a little bit more weight actually in the grip itself. So when you cut that grip off and you put a similar or stock grip that doesn't have Arccos in it, it becomes kind of swing weight neutral. But our preference would be for that sensor, Sal. I'll challenge you right now. to weigh zero.
Yeah.
We'd love it to weigh nothing. Yeah.
Our other
Oh, yeah.
challenge is we live in reality, though.
Well, even if it to make it negligible for people that care about that kind of stuff, it'd have to weigh half of a gram. Like that's like the sweet spot. Half a gram, three-quarters of a gram. That's like negligible. That's a sticker though.
Yeah. However, I would say, like, if you were to play, and I would say we can conduct this test, which is an interesting one. We've done it ourselves, but it'd be good to do it independently. If you blindfold somebody, give them an Arccos embedded grip, and give them another one, or somehow you cover it up so they can't tell the difference. And they're playing, can they tell the difference? I would contend they won't be able to, because like Golf Pride obviously spends so much time on R&D, on making the grip feel and weigh and all that stuff the same. Cobra spend enough time when we have partnership with Ping, where the engineers have spent enough time to make the clubs feel and perform exactly the same. So there's no performance impact. You're only going to get better. You're not going to get worse.
Right. Well, that's like once again convincing kids to eat their vegetables. Like it's it's.
But this one, like, look, I have it right here. It's like totally in there.
Yeah. No, I get like I get it. I get it.
I don't think we've heard complaints from people on embedded sensors. It's only when it's attached extra, that's where we've heard like, hey, I don't. So, and that, by the way, has been very limited too. When we like the partnership we run with Cobra, I would say it's probably 50-50 in terms of people's preference when they ask for, because we give them a choice. Like, do you want it embedded in your grips, or you want it like you screw in? It's a 50-50 split. Some people want it embedded. Some people actually prefer it outside, which is, I mean, we always thought, Yags and I always thought everybody wanted it embedded because it's much more elegant. You just don't feel it and see it. But
so I'm going to agree.
Really not the biggest. But I agree. It's a bigger issue for Yags because he wants the weight gone. So he's
I know.
Stuff to work with.
It's funny. I'm going to sound bipolar right now because I'm going to agree and challenge you at the same time. I do believe that we have designed our clubs such that the system is as innocuous as possible, and most players are just not going to notice it. But I can tell you from an engineer standpoint, I would say almost all players aren't going to notice it because the grip is pretty rigid from a grip standpoint. You know, it feels like a normal grip. The extra weight from the sensor, not that big a deal. But
it's also
from an engineering
fulcrum of your swing. So
yeah. But I would also say, in our world where a quarter of a gram matters in the club head, if we could get that sensor down to half its current weight, that would be a huge deal for us, because we could do some things in the golf club that we can't do right now. So
okay, let me get to work then. Like, you've just given me a task.
Yeah. So long story longer, Sal. Use this time to shrink the atom. No, because I mean the funny thing is like it seems. My point was it seems nominal, but with stuff like this, to be honest, guys, like it's always better player driven, and better player drivens care about 4.5 grams, 2.5 grams, because they weigh their golf clubs, they get custom fit, they build clubs, they understand how golf clubs work. Most of them do, not all of them, but most people are very aware of the makeup of their golf clubs. That small demographic is the sexy group, cool kids in high school group that sort of dictates what the rest of the golfers are going to do. So if it's easy for that demographic, like the Golf WRX crowd, for example, and all of a sudden everybody in the WRX crowd is going, these things, like literally it's a sticker. I took it, stuck it on my club. I could use any grip I wanted. I didn't have to reshaft, regrip anything. And as when I was building my clubs, I noticed I didn't have to add any extra weight to the head. I don't have to do anything to the golf club. I put it on. I didn't even notice it was there. That, to me, even for myself, I'm speaking for myself selfishly, that's what would take this. If there's 22 million golfers on the planet right now, 400,000 or 500,000 of them are you in Arccos. That's what takes that 500,000 to 4 million people using.
I think that's maybe one small. I would maybe disagree with you guys a little bit, because all the studies we do, it's really, in the end, are you like, the golfer's going to make the choice. Okay, you add this 4.6 grams, or 4.3 grams. And by the way, like it takes some grip, whatever, rubber weight out or whatever. Or so what is that going to do to your strokes gain? In the end, it's all about scoring. Are you going to lose 0.2 shots because of this? I would contend absolutely not. That would be my contention. But are you going to gain, depending upon your handicap, like 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 shots because of your awareness? Yes. So in the end, golf is going to make that decision. I think with Yags, every year we're growing, we're doubling. So people are becoming more aware. They're making that choice. They're making a decision. And even on the elite side, right now, Claude Harmon's Floridian Academy, they've said they're not teaching anybody if you don't have Arccos. So like the elite, we had a couple of players reach the quarterfinals or the round of 16, I forget, of the USM last year. So we have a bunch of elite players using it. In fact, we have what I've heard anecdotally from actually at one time, I think Gags, you called me or USG called me, I forget. There's some players using it on the senior tour, things like that. So they're trying to figure out whether to allow it in tournaments or not, because that's separate jurisdiction. So I would say there's elite players using it. The biggest issue on the elite level isn't the sensor size, because embedded stuff solves it for almost all of them. Maybe for a very, very, like maybe the 1% of that population, it might not. It's carrying the phone in their pocket. And that's what we're focused on solving. And we're coming out with a device that you can clip on your belt or pocket. But that we find is one big hurdle in terms of getting into colleges, because cell phones actually aren't allowed during tournament. And for players that still want to carry, they can. And then the other piece is really deeper analytics, deeper ability to slice and dice their data to correlate, okay, am I actually struggling in my approach game, like I'm losing strokes out of the rough, or from what yardage is, or what distance is my putting really sucking, things like that. That's where I would say we can make a difference. Those are two biggest issues that we see.
I guess the last, I guess, unicorn scenario would be like TrackMan has, where you can set up TrackMan range type thing, where you set up Arccos, where there's Arccos devices hidden in the golf, all over the golf course, and people don't even, all they have to do is sort of, log into the system on their phone and say, I'm playing this golf course right now, so pick up my scent, and it picks up their scent, and those little monitors track them around the golf course, so they don't have to carry anything. Like, they get home, and then you
don't even need that. I would say for unicorn scenario, you don't even need that. God just tracks you. And
but that's the next Zoom chat we're going to do, is how do we get God to just spit out all this knowledge. But guys, this has been so much more. Go ahead. Yeah, you got something else for us before we go?
Yeah, I was just going to pile on that last conversation, because it was fun watching you guys go back and forth, because here's the truth, right? You're both right. And Sal, you gave a great analogy. There's a whole bunch of players who don't want to use the system because they don't want to play with their phone in the pocket, just like there's influencers that Johnny described that don't want to play with it because it adds weight to the club, and they get all freaked out. But here's the other truth. For a lot of the guys who said, I don't want to play with my phone in my pocket, once they tried it, what'd they say, Sal? It's not a big deal, right?
Basically, it costs us more to convince you to try it. But once you try it, you realize Google and Apple have been spending billions of dollars to get you used to carrying your phone in your pocket. You don't even realize it's there. But
so I would say the same.
To get people to try it.
I'm going to say the same thing about the added 4.3 grams of the sensor. For the really good players, the elite players that are listening to this right now, I'm telling you, most of you, when you put it on there, you're like, holy crap, the benefits that I get from this far outweigh the concern I had with my club build. Far outweigh it. Now, do I still want Sal to get this thing down to 1/4 gram?
Yes.
Oh, yes. But for right now, the benefits far outweigh any of the penalty that's in the club. Far. So that's my last.
So Sal, you still need to go split the atom.
Yes.
So don't make no mistake. Like, it's not like we didn't say, okay, Sal,
no.
I thought it was coming like a Zoom chat. You guys are giving me homework?
Yes.
Correct. That's correct. Guys, this was fun. Thank you for doing this. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I always love talking. Talking to seeing other humans is always a good thing. But guys, wash your hands, take care of your families, and hopefully we can do this again. Hopefully we can do it in person, so we're not doing it from our kids' rooms.
Totally.
Everybody, be good out there.
All right.
Thanks, boys.
Yeah.
See ya.
Take care.
Bye bye.